So what was your new career within the police?
Well, I say I worked over 14 years undercover, but I didn't work all the time. So I would do 7 months and I would go back to conventional detective work for a few months, and then I would do another operation. So I qualified as a detective in 2000, I think. And so I did conventional ground level detective work, and then I became a detective sergeant. So I would supervise serious crime investigations, rapes and things like that.
Did you do any homicide investigations?
Yeah, I did a few. Yeah, but homicide murders are they're done in a very particular way in the UK. So you'd be put on a team as part of the outside inquiry team. It's a big team does a murder. The structure of it's quite complicated. You know, you have your homes operators, the computer operators, statement readers, your detectives. So then you'd have a senior investigating officer who would direct everything. So it's a big operation of murder in the UK.
Are there any murder cases you can describe that you worked on?
Yeah, there was one horrifying one at Ashbourne. What was her name? I can remember the offender's name, Mark Deitch. He was the murderer. And this was a really tragic one because it was police incompetence which led to this woman getting murdered. I don't know how systematic it was. I can't remember what the investigation into the police actually concluded, but I know one person got sacked and the person got disciplined. But essentially, it was a domestic violence problem. This girl, very middle class background in Ashbourne, and she'd been going out with this guy, Mark Deitch, and she decided that he was a bit creepy and she wanted to break it off. And he didn't like that. He saw her as property, and he was hassling her with phones and threats by proxy. And she kept reporting this to the police that she was scared of various instances. And there was recordings of harassment on the system, but no particular evidence of any investigation into that harassment. And this kept happening. And then one day she was driving onto her village, her car park where she lived in her village, and there were 4 men waiting for her who beat her with baseball bats. The only thing that they took was a watch, which had been given to her, a very expensive watch given to her by Mark Deitch. This was reported to detectives. Now, I know it's easy to say with hindsight, but it doesn't matter. I know as a detective what I would have done instantly there. There was only one suspect for that. I'd have instantly got a warrant for his house and gone to arrest him. There's no, it's not complicated who it's likely to be, is it, in those circumstances? But that didn't happen. And so sometime later, the next instance was she was stopped by a car on a country lane and her head blown off with a shotgun. And it's not unreasonable to suggest that could have been prevented. Now, don't get me wrong. I've worked with incredibly professional detectives, and Derbyshire Constabulary generally are one of the best anywhere. They are brilliant. But it just goes to show that, the system can break down, and there was genuine incompetence led to that series of those circumstances and that poor woman's death.
How many murder cases did you investigate?
Trying to think. Not in 1999 when I was learning to be a detective. Probably 4, maybe.
And how many of those were solved?
All of them.
And was it generally, like you hear this cliche, it's usually someone the victim knows? Is that in your experience, was that the case?
Oh yeah, absolutely. 90% of murders are by someone that's known. I think it's over 90%, and most of those are domestic. Yeah.
So it's usually a female victim.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the single biggest reason women die worldwide is domestic violence. That statistic was quite recent. It's not surprising, which is why we should be taking domestic violence far more seriously. And also, it brings us back to the war on drugs. All the resources we spend on the war on drugs, and women are getting murdered. You would be able to safeguard people. You would be able to investigate those harassments more effectively if those resources were directed that way.
one of the stats, or I don't know, I heard it in a speech by one of the Leap speakers, was that since the war on drugs has started, the rate at which murders are solved in America has gone down, because there's an incentive to make all these arrests for arrest quotas and stuff, and just, the easiest people to arrest people possessing drugs, and then they get more federal funding and more this and more that to finance the department. So there's this like incentive not to solve the murders.
Well, absolutely. I mean, the murder detection rate, the murder solving rate is actually a very, very important topic, and it's one of my favourite topics that I try and explain, actually, because what happened in America from the point when Nixon really declared the war on drugs in his aggressive way, at the point that he declared that, the murder detection rate in the United States was 85%. 85%, and it had been that high for quite a while, consistently. Within 4 years, it dropped to 65%. Within 4 years. And it's not climbed above that since. Now, if you consider that the 1980s and 90s have had enormous steps forward in forensic science, both improved fingerprinting technology, the ninhydrin fingerprinting, all that kind of stuff, the DNA techniques, all of these advances in forensic science should have taken it in the other direction, but it's not improved above 65%. Now, I've been predicting that we will suffer that drop in this country for the same reasons. Now, we're always going to be much slower to suffer that loss to the United States because we don't have guns on the streets. That's why it was so quick in the States, because of the guns. Now, I slightly disagree with the reasoning of whoever said why that's happened, because to me it's quite clear that the most important part of policing in solving crime is connection with the community, and what the war on drugs does is separate police and community, and so there's no flow of information. And as organised crime have become more dominant in those communities, replacing the police connection, then organised crime controls the narrative in those communities. So a murder, if organised crime don't want a murder solved, then the pressure is them not to talk to the police. So that 20% shift is a numerical shift from the power of police to organised crime. Now, I've been predicting it will happen here, and the last announcement of detection rates from the Met started with a statement from Cressida Dick that murders are getting harder to solve. That was the words that she used. Now, traditionally in the UK, we have some of the best murder detection rates in the world, especially considering we have such a big population. Hovers around 90%. 90% for a long, long time. Last announcement, 77%. And that's going to fall.
Leap. Who are Leap? Let's tell the people out there.
LEAP is the Law Enforcement Action Partnership, and we are a rapidly growing international movement of police and other law enforcement figures who believe the same as I have. They've come to the same conclusions. We're generally people who've been on the front line in the drug war and seen the same kind of things as me and come to the same conclusions. Started in the United States in 2002. There are some wonderful people in LEAP in the United States, people like Diane Goldstein, Neil Franklin, who's the chairman, Lee Maddox, who featured in Johan Hari's Chasing the Scream.
Brilliant book, Chasing the Scream. Really recommend people read that, especially what he says about Harry Anslinger and all that stuff.
Yeah, it's fantastic, isn't it? Yeah. Johan's amazing. Well, so Lee Maddox is the one who features from LEAP in there. And we have spread a lot. In the UK, we have former chief constables, security services, military, other undercover cops like me. There's a few of us now. Former DIs. We have lots of serving police who are speaking to us who want to be members, but they're not quite confident about doing that yet. But we're growing rapidly. 2 years ago we launched LEAP Scandinavia. And now half of their membership are serving police. There's 35 members, 16 of them are serving cops. We've even got in Scandinavia. We've even got criminologists who teach the police from Denmark and Norway. Later this year we launched LEAP France. We've got LEAP Germany, LEAP Australia. We're speaking to sympathetic police all over the place, South Africa. We've got members in Poland. And we are growing rapidly. It's, if anyone wants to help us organise, and we were about to ask for volunteers for LEAP UK, actually, because we need help in all the projects
And
that
how
we
can
need to
people
do.
watching this video do that? Is there a link I can put below this video that people can contact you or get involved somehow?
Yeah, well, I mean, the best way that we communicate with the public is Twitter, I think, because that Twitter tends to be where the drug policy debate goes. Politicians are involved in on the debate on there. So our Twitter name is @UKLeap. It's the same for Instagram, I believe. We're also active on Facebook, or you can email our website at the support address on the website. But we're not exactly sure how the roles are going to shape up yet, but we are a voluntary organisation. We struggle to get funding. So if anybody out there is good at getting funding, is good with social media, or think they have skills or experience they can offer us that we don't even understand, then please do get in touch. And if you do nothing else, then please follow us on social media and spread the word, because in trying to bring an end to this war on drugs, I do spend a lot of time speaking to politicians. I was at the Labour Party conference yesterday, speaking at a well-attended event. Next week, I'm at the Conservative conference. So, we do a lot of political advocacy, and that is important. But what's more important than politicians is everyone out there. Because if you agree with us that this is a crisis and we have to end the drug war, we need to regulate the drug markets and take the power away from organised crime. If you agree with us, then you are part of the social movement. And it's the social movement that's important, because it's the social movement that drives politics. And this social movement is actually growing rapidly. It really is. But if you look at other social movements in history, social justice issues, homosexuality, for example, was illegal. And then after it was made legal, there was still massive prejudice. And you watch some comedy in the 1970s, and it's brutally unkind to gay people. But society has changed. But it's changed through social movement, not from leadership, really. And sometimes it's hard to put your finger on exactly where the tipping point comes for something like that. But we're reaching the tipping point, and anybody out there can help us reach that tipping point if you just join the social movement, explain this to other people, point other people to this podcast to listen to it, get people to listen, get people to read the books, get people to follow us on social media.